Okay. So thank you everybody for being here, for your starting a conversation about technology and the students. It's a big themes. We all try to figure out every day what's the best for them. And we don't have a magic wand. We would love to, as educators, as parents, even as students, they're aware sometimes of their struggle with the media. So we're here to start a conversation that we want to be an ongoing conversation. So we're going to work on it also next year and the years after. And because we're almost at the end of the school year, we decided to start this big conversation with a summary theme, staying in the driver's seat this summer. So how we are going to handle this long school break and making sure our kids are not going to spend their days in front of a screen, and how to better protect them and educate them about that. So I'm gonna let the floor to our two main speakers, Anne-Sophie Serré and Mathilde Cerioli. Thank you very much again for being here.
Thank you so much for the invitation, and a quick introduction about us so you understand why we're here and why it's an important topic for us. So my name is Anne-Sophie, and I am the executive director of a nonprofit called everyone.AI, and here is Mathilde.
Hi, so I work with Anne-Sophie as a chief scientist at everyone.AI, and my background is in neuroscience, psychology, positive discipline, and I've been working on how to improve existing solutions, make them more efficient for children, and at the same time, really thinking about how we use the screens for the best and when is it time to disconnect from screen and to get back to real life, and really helping both developers of products and parents finding the right balance.
Absolutely. And so at everyone.ai, our mission is really to anticipate. So this is why Mathilde spent the last 10 months working with AI experts and also children development educators. As she mentioned, our audience is really parents. We really want to help you to understand more AI. So then you will have more tools to choose if you want to use AI with your children or not, and when to choose it, how to choose it. We also work with developers, product developers, and government to work on guidelines. So AI is already in our daily lives. There is so much to say. So we decided with the school that we will split the topic. Today, we will really talk about how AI is already in our daily lives and why we are so attracted and addicted to our phones. This is also because of AI. I want to mention at everyone.ai, we love AI. There's plenty of very good possibilities and a lot of good features. This is true that when we will help you to stay safer this summer with your kids, we will talk more about the current risk. But don't throw AI out of the door. There's plenty of very good opportunities with AI as well. So, Mathilde, we really want to invite you to think about daily life and your screen time with your kids. And are your kids bugging you for more screen time, for more apps, for more smartphone, or maybe you already gave a smartphone because you have like decisions fatigue? And if it's the case in your house, please, you're not alone. We are parents too, so we know exactly what it is. And in this room, we may have parents with kids with different ages, in different stage. Maybe you already gave a phone. Maybe you are still struggling to figure out when to give a phone. So this is totally fun. And I really want to mention that it's a judgment-free zone. I mean, we all do our best, and we will propose a lot of guidelines. But really, what I invite you to think during the presentation is what feels correct for you and what could be your next step. And your next step is not the same next step as someone else. And we all should be very comfortable with that. And in case you feel some overwhelming, I can tell you, you're not alone. And let's see the data that are very sharing this view. So even if most of the parents know that smartphone might not be beneficial and might be harmful for the kids, and parents think they know how much screen time is good for their kids, then the reality is kids spend most of their day on screen, and especially 13 to 18 years old, they spend most of the awake day outside of school on screen. And also most of the kids have a smartphone, even if as a parent we might know that it might be harmful and it's not the best for them. The reality is here. So I think we all have this inner conflict about knowing what will be the best for our kids and what is the actual situation. So in general, we can say that there's a tendency these days about parents to tend to overprotect children in the physical world. Next slide. To overprotect children in the physical world because it's seen. We all have like habits about very like protecting our children, and the reality is we are not that protecting on digital world. So there's a balance that we invite you to think about what will be the best for our children and how they will grow. So you have a question, some homework for you. As parents, sometimes we don't have time enough to take a step back and to think about what do we want for our kids. So in the beginning of this presentation, we really want to invite you to see in the future and ask yourself, what skills do you hope your kids have when you imagine them in the future? So put in the chat if you are able, if you are willing to share. What skills do you want them to have? Let's see if I can see the chat. Do we have a chat?
No, it appears that there's no chat. Maybe Fabien, you can activate it. I don't know if I think you are the owner of the Zoom. Yeah, if you can own the chat because we cannot chat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So you have more time to think about what do you want for your kids. And I already did an introduction about the balance between real world life and digital world. But do we have a chat now? Maybe not.
No, not sure. I think they actually changed their version and now
okay, all right. So think for yourself. And I will invite you during this presentation to see if your kids' digital life is actually fulfilling this goal. Not only about safety, but also about what they are learning, about where you want them to go in their life and what skills you want them to learn. So then it will also be helpful tips for you to hear all the guidelines we will give, so you can also choose what are the steps you want to take because they are more important for you. Okay, so I invite you during this coming 45 minutes to listen. We will have questions at the end, and stay open-minded by all those recommendations. Again, there is no judgment. We have a lot of recommendations to share, and everybody can be on their own page. So the agenda for today, there's 5 parts. We first will share a lot of neuroscientific information. This is the chance to have a neuroscientist doctor here with Mathilde, and she will teach us a little bit more about our child's brain. And by understanding a little bit more the child's brain, it also help us to understand why AI is so active and in our daily lives. Then we will talk about the data, about screens and kids, and we will go through recommendations and the Q&As at the end. Okay, go Mathilde, your turn.
Okay, so I want to start by talking about human and AI literacy together. There's often a distinction that's done with we need to do more AI literacy, we need to understand more. But before we start even understanding AI, I think the first step should be to understand ourselves as human. How do we function? So right now we are going to really focus on what is healthy development. How do children learn? What does it look like when everything goes well? What do they need? So children's brain is going to develop depending on different factors. There are some genetics factors, who they are, their genes, that we don't have that much impact on as parents. The second thing that influences how we learn is our environment. So for instance, what language do I speak? Well, for me, I speak French because I learned French. And then I was in an environment where I had to learn English, while I learned English. And these are the kind of things that are going to shape our children's brain. And another concept that's really important to understand about children is that they are not mini adults. Like, they don't have much knowledge when they're born. Like, it's pretty obvious when you see them the first time. And they develop during their first 25 years. So it's not just the beginning of the life. It's like all through the first quarter where they are really interacting with their environment and where they're more sensitive. And what we see is like there are windows in the brain where you learn some skills faster. So for instance, I learned English outside of my window of opportunity. That's why I still have an accent. That's why I will never be as proficient, no matter how hard I try. And I'm really trying, I swear. So that's some things that you have to keep in mind about, like, what kind of environment do you want to provide to your children? What kind of experiences? Sorry, it's lagging. The second time that's important, and that's highly specific, and I think it's important that we zoom in on that today, because I feel like we're toward the end of elementary, beginning of middle school, and it's really where that happens. Like, the adolescent's brain is a very specific time in the brain where cards are being like shuffled again. So what we see with adolescent, and anyone who has an adolescent is going to see what I've been talking about, they take more risk. And the reason they do that is not just so that we get super scared and anxious all the time about them. They're just pre-wired to do that. What happens in their brain is the zone that really is involved in reward seeking, and the reward system first developed, and only after emotional regulation and the ability to deal with impulsivity, which is why if they see a short-term reward, they really want it, and it's really hard for them not to go for it. Another thing that makes it very hard for them is their social life becomes very complex. For a long time, you were their whole life. And as they grow older, the relationship with their peers become very important. They have a higher need to belong. They need to be part of the group. So they need that phone because everyone has a phone and they need to be like everyone else. They have higher fear of missing out. So same thing, like everything's happening online and I don't have phone and I'm missing out on life. Those are things that are harder for them. It's not like when they're like crying and bawling their eyes because you're so cruel, they really feel it in their heart. And their social life becomes much more complex as well. Because they're interacting with different people. And if you add on that, having to deal with social life online, which is different and which has very specific challenges that we will talk about, that kind of adds on to that. And the third thing that is important in their brain is their sleep patterns are changing. So they tend to fall asleep much later, to wake up later as well. It's not just because they want to hang out in the evening. It's actually harder for them to fall asleep as early as it used to. That being said, they still need 10 to 12 hours of sleep. So it's not because it's changing that they don't need as much. And sometimes during some period, they might need it even more because so much is happening in their brain that they need the rest. And there's a change in the patterns of their sleep. So it's not like a child anymore, but it's not like an adult quite yet. And they are more sensitive to light than an adult would be. So exposure to screen's light messes with their circadian rhythm more than for adults. So what do our children need to learn and to grow? Well, they need a positive environment. So they need to have their physiological needs met. So food, but sleep as well. And we're going to talk about it because it's a big chapter of what they need. They need a nurturing environment. They need you. They need to know you care. They need you to be involved. They need to have an open conversation with you and an ongoing one. They need diverse experience. Like everything, we need a balance in the experiences we give our brain. So the same way when we eat some of each food, and some food you can have more, some less, but you need all of it. It's the same with the experiences they need. They need to play. And even preteen, even teens, they need to play. And the last thing they learn a lot from is their role models. Their role models is often you, and it's changing as well to become their peers. Those are going to be role models. Can also be internet celebrities, so who they follow, what are their role models and what they value is going to be important, because that's one of the ways they learn. So I just want to do a quick pause on play, because first, like, it's what I did my PhD on, that's something I'm passionate about, and it's not just play. When children play, what they're doing is they're experiencing their world. They're trying out new things. And because they're playing, it's engaging, it's rewarding, so they take more risk. They try things they might not, so they can challenge themselves at their own rhythm. It's really good for their intrinsic motivation. They're forming cognition. They're really developing their emotional intelligence. When I'm playing with a friend and they don't want to do my game, they are cheating, they push me, how do I react to that? Those are things that they learn through play, because it's usually in collaborations with others. They learn to be resilient when things don't go well. They, of course, play has a lot of physical fitness aspect to it, and where they also like learn to move their body to take risk that they need to really think about. And that's why like the overprotection sometimes in the physical world can get in the way of them really like learning where are my limits. And finally, they learn about creativity and problem solving. How do I deal with my friend? How do I deal with, I can't manage to put that basketball in the hoop every time. So do I try to get closer to it? Do I try to lower it? Those are things they do naturally. And sometimes with screens is part of play, but the kind of issue that we can see with video games, for instance, is that it's in a more controlled way. There's no physical aspect, or very little, and they don't have the freedom to play as much. There's not as much intrinsic motivation because it's more like within the game design that they're playing. So when we're thinking of our children's well-being, and we're going to talk about some of the risk factors, but right now I want to talk about what's protective to them, what helps them learn, grow, and thrive. As I mentioned before, but really important, nurturing environment. They need a rich social life, which is with their family, with their friends. They need to have physical activity, and this because it gets their body on, and we need that for developing our cognition, for stress relief, for resilience. They learn and they need independence, and independence is being able to cross the street without your parent. It is knowing that if your parent is not there, you're able to make a sandwich for yourself. Those might seem like funny things, but they're actually really important to them because it makes them feel capable, and that's part of also their feeling of self and of self-confidence. So they need responsibilities. And responsibilities looks different at 4-year-old, at 8 years old, at 12 years old, but you have to gradually give them those responsibilities and so that they can learn and build on it. So now let's get into the AI part. How is AI hijacking us? Good question. Well, AI is hijacking us with the context of screens. And often people are surprised that when we do a talk about AI, we spend a lot of time speaking about screens, but we've been exposed to AI for a while. So generative AI, and I think we're all thinking about it, like ChatGPT, really put AI on the map, where all of a sudden we're like, oh, AI is a thing. But it's been a thing for a very long time because ChatGPT is generative AI, but machine learning is AI as well, deep learning is AI, and those are already part of our system. So streaming, video streaming, YouTube, Netflix, they're learning what you like, they're suggesting things that you will enjoy. Ads, they target you, and they target you well often. And you can see that if you see your social media or your partner's social media, usually you don't have the same kind of ads because you don't enjoy the same things. You see it also in the content creation you get on social media, and finally in video games, there's a lot that's going on where it's adapting to the player's level of play. So usually it makes it harder or easier so that they stay engaged, and also through creating some of the interaction you have with players. So how is all of that AI influencing us? Well, the goal of most of the products and the screens I've been talking about is your time. They want you to stay on the application, the game, like that's their metrics. How long do you stay engaged? And so to be engaged and to want to stay there, we're all the same. Like if I start like being very boring, you're gonna want to disconnect because you're not enjoying yourself anymore. So what you want is things that are entertaining, that are fun, that are talking about what you know, about what you like, about your political preferences, about the things that make you laugh, the things that make you cry, the things that makes you scared, but things that appeal to you. And it does that by playing also through your reward system. So when you like something, you want to keep doing it. And finally, through content creation, because it's giving you the content you want so that you stay engaged. So in the end, what happens is that you tend to spend time on there. So there's time going on. And it's also playing on the way you think about the kind of reward you need, how much reward you need. And there's more and more research that is being done about the impact of all of these AI and the reward system and how it's developing. And there's more and more elements that are making us think that maybe it's also playing long-term impact on how we perceive the world and what we need. So there's aspects of it, as I mentioned, that are really kind of modifying the way we interact. And so one of the things to keep in mind, especially with young kids, but it works for you as well, is notifications and multitasking are two effects that have been shown to play on children's attention. So if you're doing something and you get a notification every 15 seconds, every time you disengage your attention, you engage it somewhere else, and then you have to re-engage. It's very costly. It's actually very difficult for the brain to do that. And it's the same for multitasking. You can't do two things at once. You might think you can, but what you do is like you switch attention all the time, and that has a cost and that takes time. And at the end, you're less efficient. We know it also increases the stress level of people. And for children, we know that when they are either multitasking or they have a lot of notification, it's actually linked negatively to their academic results. So when they do homework, phones, computers, anything that beeps and that gets their attention should be left in another room. And then also one of the things we can do for notification is you can batch them. There's a proper way of doing that. When we do research and we ask people to reduce the level of notifications they get, and they just get it maybe 3-5 times a day all at once, it can reduce their stress and increase their well-being. And especially with teenagers who have a higher fear of missing out, it might also lead to more compulsive checking. So they have to find what is the right balance where they actually don't feel as overwhelmed, but where they don't feel like maybe there's been a notification and I don't know, should I check? And when they check every minute, that means like it's not the right balance for them yet. One of the other impact of screens getting our attention and keeping our attention is actually us adults, which is what we call technoference. We had to invent a new word to really describe that concept. So 70% of parents say their screen is getting in the way of their parenting. They can feel like it's having an impact. And in return, 81% of children say that they sometimes feel lonely because of their parents' screen use. And it also changes the way parents tend to interact with their children. We know that they are more impatient. They are aggressive quicker. when they're on their smartphones and they're being distracted, interrupted by their children, and they are also less stimulating. That's true also for TV. So we know, for instance, that when there's a TV in the background and you see how parents interact with their kids, you see they are much less interesting and much less stimulating even with young kids. That's why like passive TV watching is better to be avoided. So now let's really dive in on what do we know about the impact of screens infused with AI and kids. It takes a lot of their time. There's only 24 hours in a day, and I feel like we all get that as adults, like there's never enough time. And when a lot of this time is spent on screens, when you don't have as much time to engage in the rest of the world. So if we take that children are supposed at this age to sleep 8 to 10 hours, and we look at how much time they consume of screens, then we can get an idea of how much time is left for the rest. So between 8 and 12 years old, it means like to do meals, school, sports, family time, hang out with their friends. They still have 8.5 hours of free time. Then you have to deduct school time out of that. And then when you move on to 13, 18 years old, it means they only have 5 hours left of doing the rest. So it doesn't leave a lot of wiggle room to do other things. And that in itself is an issue. Like I mentioned at the beginning, it's kind of you need very rich and diverse experiences. That doesn't provide as much diversity as children might need. So when we look at the direct consequences, when you do research on the impact on screens on children and the impact of AI on children, there are two ways of looking at that. You can see sometimes direct consequences where A causes B. That we don't have that many kind of factors like that. And then you can see A and B. When A is high, B is high. So you know they're moving together, but you don't know which one is the egg and which one is the chicken. Like that's something we see. But for those, we know that A causes B. So we know that screen have direct consequences on the 3S. So sight, sleep, and sedentarity. So right now there's an epidemic of myopia that's going on. Children tend to we see higher percentages of myopia. And so when we look toward like Asia, who's usually a good predictor because they're just a few years in advance for us for some of the negative impacts. Now it's more than 70% of children above the age of 10 that have myopia. And the problem is growing. And myopia at this age might lead and is a factor for macular degeneration, blindness. So there's going to be issues with that when children spend too much time on screen. And the reason is that when children are looking at the screen, they tend to have a very reduced visual system. So they're really looking up close. That's why children need to be outside, because even in the home, like you're still like kind of blocked by your walls and it's more constrained. So that's why being outside is really important for sight. And the blue lights that screens give us are less filtered by the retina that for adults, because their brain is not mature yet. So up until 15 to 18 years old, they are more vulnerable to the impact of screens. The second S now. So we know it deeply impacts children's sleep. For two reasons. Yes, because as we've seen, there's not that many hours in a day. So when do we get on screens? Usually before going to bed. And so especially during the first, the last hour before going to bed is where the impact is the biggest. So usually it leads children to go to bed later. And even when they go to bed after turning off the phone, the blue light make it that they take a bit longer to fall asleep. And it also plays with the quality of their sleep, because it really like kind of shifts their circadian cycle, which means they don't get as many sleep that really help reset the body. So there's different consequences. One of them is learning in memory, because when you're sleeping, you're actually really consolidating what you learned during the day. And we also know that, and you might know that, well, you have children, so you know that because you've been sleep deprived in your life. Your attention skills are not the same when you're tired. So what happens when I'm tired, I have trouble like concentrating, and I'm in class and my teacher is giving the lesson and I can't focus, I'm missing a bit part of what's going on. So I'm not learning as well. It also plays with emotional regulation. Same, you've seen that. We get annoyed a bit faster when we're tired. We can really see the impact on our screens, on our kids. I mean, like when they haven't had a good night's sleep, usually we know, like it shows. And it also plays long-term on stress and anxiety. So there's really impact on mental health. So really putting their sleep first and putting a lot of emphasis on that is going to be important. So the way we use screens, when we use screen, has to really take into account how it might impact their sleep. So for that, like really trying to avoid screens the hour before going to bed is essential. And the third S is sedentarity. Well, when I'm sitting, playing a video game, I'm not moving my body. That's one of the first things. So it's linked to higher risk of obesity and then long-term more health issues. And overweight's also impacting weight is because people tend to overeat when they're on a screen because they're not paying attention to what they're eating. They're not paying attention to their cues of hunger. So they tend to eat more. So I've been saying, okay, like there's negative consequences. So should we just toss our screens and never use them again? The answer is no, because there's good things that come with them. Well, first, I think we can all agree they're fun. Like they do provide short-term good feelings for us. But they can also provide just more than that. So children have access to a wealth of knowledge that we didn't. Like we used to ask our parents, I don't know about that. Like, can you tell me why does it work like that? And they would say like, I don't know. And that would be the end of it. No, like we get to know, we get to tell them. So they have a lot more knowledge than we used to. And they can get that knowledge through some of the YouTube videos. Sometimes like they will find like great tutorials. They will learn stuff in video games and even social media, like depending on what they see, they might be learning things on there. For cognition, we know especially spatial orientation and attention, video games can actually be pretty effective and positive for that. They also develop social skills through their use of social media, of video games, when it's done in an appropriate way, of course. But especially video games, when it's collaborative, they are usually like working together to find a solution. So when they're playing with friends, there really is that aspect that is there. And it can be positive for well-being. Same, when it's appropriate, when the content is high quality, and when it's not for a very long time. We actually know that because, as we said, like teenagers, they need to belong, they need to be part of the group. So sometimes being part of the group means like being able to know what's going on with our friends, having conversation with them on WhatsApp, feeling like you are part of the rest of your community is important for adolescents, and especially for adolescents who are looking for their identity, who are researching that. We know that they might find answers, they might find other people they identify with that they might not find otherwise. There are mediating factors for all of that, be it positive or negative impacts. We know that gender has different impacts. So we see that for boys, they tend to spend more time on video games, and girls more time on social media. So we know that we know that for girls, social media has an impact often on their body image because they tend to compare themselves much more than boys do. On there, we also know that in video games, usually female characters are over-sexualized, which also has an impact on their body image. And it also has negative impact on boys, like the over-sexualization of girls, because then they tend to start seeing girls this way as well. So it's harmful for both of them. We know, and especially for video games, race is not represented in an equal manner as for females. So that also plays in how that might impact them, their mental health. So we know that per se, social media might not cause depression, but what we see is like adolescents who are depressive to begin with, they tend to use social media more. They tend to use it in ways that are not as healthy, even the content they look at. And that in turn really increases the risk of depression. ADHD is also a risk factor because of really the inherent differences in ADHD. So people with ADHD need more reward to do things, and that's exactly what social media, what video games give them. It gives them reward, easily accessible and fast, and so they're more attracted to that, so they're more at risk of forming addiction. And finally, personality traits. So for instance, and we've mentioned it, fear of missing out, we don't have the same levels, all of us. So people who have a higher fear of missing out are more affected by the need to be online and to be with others and to check. So I mentioned right now that at some point their use of the screens might be problematic. So what do we mean by that? When should we worry? When should we feel like, well, you know what, I don't know if I should be comfortable with their use. Is it too much? One of the way of looking is to see if it's really interfering significantly, and by that over time. It's not like once in a while they get annoyed or frustrated. It has to be like significant to a point where you're like, it is really becoming an issue in our house. And it's when it impacts their ability to go through their daily routines, to their commitments, like they want to skip school, they don't want to do their extracurricular activities because they'd rather be online. It's impacting their sleep. They're not going to bed because they are checking, sometimes during the night. Sometimes they're putting alarms during the night to go and check their phone. And it's impacting their ability for regular physical activity because they are like so staying inside and really focusing on their screen. When it also impacts their behaviors, so they start lying to spend more time online, when no matter what activity they choose this one. And finally, even when they are themselves thinking like, you know what, it's too much, I want to spend less time, they still can't get a hang of it, and they really struggle with that. So if those are things like you might be wondering for your children, the first good resources, like everything, is to talk to your pediatrician. Like they do have resources to help, and to also see like, are you just worrying and maybe it's just part of being a teen, or is it something that's more serious? But if you are wondering, it's always good to check. So up until now, we were talking about, okay, when all goes well, when the content is appropriate, when it's age appropriate, when what they're doing on there is fine, there's already too much time that's being spent. So that's the first issue. But now what happens when what they're doing on there is not healthy? And there's really like two types. The content they're seeing, what are they exposed to? They tend to be exposed through screens to more violence at an earlier age than they would. They are more exposed to sexual content. So, and I think the statistic might be higher now. More than 1 in 2 boys and more than 1 in 4 girls have been exposed to porn by the time they are 12 to 15 years old. And we know that impacts their perception of it. They don't have the maturity yet to understand what they're seeing. And as a parent myself, I see that issue that we're facing as parents, where we're like, when they're online, I want to prepare them to whatever they could be seeing. because I want them to not panic and go and talk to me. And at the same time, I don't want to be the one telling them about things I don't want to explain, because I know they're not ready for that. So it's really a double issue. And that's why like having ongoing conversation with them is going to be important about what they see. Like, did you see anything online that surprised you, that you were uncomfortable with? And to also say like, sometimes online, and I can't give you the detail, but you might see things and be like, what is that? When that happens, go and talk to me. There is no judgment. I'm never going to be mad for what you see. Like you did not decide. And even if you did decide, you know what, it's fine. Like you're learning this new part of the world. So same way that when they're going to go out in the real world, they're going to make decisions that you might not agree with, and still like you're going to give them a second chance. It's the same online. So how do we really accompany them in that? And the second type of harmful content is really their interactions. So online, they are more at risk of cyberbullying. It's actually 1 in 2 teens that have been a victim of cyberbullying. And I think often when we picture cyberbullying, we picture things that are very dire, but it doesn't have to be like hundreds of kids bullying our children. Often it's actually one of their close friends, someone they know. Often the person who cyberbullied was not really even aware they were doing that, because when we're online, there's really a gap in empathy. We don't see the person's reaction. So maybe I say a joke and I meant it as a joke, but then when the person reads it, it doesn't read as a joke. It reads more as an attack, and then someone commented. So there's really like that kind of snowball effect that can happen really fast. So talking to your child about cyberbullying is important, but also talking to your child about how not to be a cyberbully. One of the biggest factors that diminish the chances of children being cyberbullied is knowing how much their parents care about that, and the level of importance they give to that. And finally, one of the last risks is grooming. So it impacts both boys and girls in different ways. More than half of the girls say they have been solicited by strangers online. They've been uncomfortable, but what they see usually happens really fast when they open their social media account, because there's AI, and so it knows exactly what age they are, and networks of people who want to be involved with children know how to use that AI to be connected to them. And for boys, it's more about blackmail and sextortions, about asking children to give information and then using it to blackmail those kids. So, because I feel like often grooming, people think it's really much of a girl issue. It's actually both a boy and a girl issue.
So let's go to see some recommendation. We saw some worst case scenario. So I really want to let you acknowledge a few things you do well at home. I'm sure there's some rules you are doing right and some rules you are comfortable with. So just take one second to think about them, just to make sure that when you will add new rules or new ideas, you will keep those rules that are actually working, and don't hesitate to share them with your community. Let's do a very quick focus on privacy, because this is a very important topic. Mathilde?
Yes. Oop. Sorry. Getting there. Okay. So about privacy, something that's important to understand is that you have to have those conversations with your children, and at the same time, it's very abstract to understand this concept. So when we do research to really see what do children understand about the internet, about AI, about privacy, what we see is mostly they don't get much of it. So even with the conversation, it's really hard because it is so abstract. Even for us as adults, it's hard. We forget that sometimes when we're in a group of 20 people in a chat, there's only 4 or 5 that are talking, and all of a sudden we forget about the 15 others, and they are still there. So those are things that are difficult for them. So a good way to help with the fact that they cannot grasp that level of abstraction is to make it very concrete, to really find metaphors from the digital world to the real world. So one of the tips you can give your child is like, do not write online something that you wouldn't say while being recorded on camera. Because once it's online, it can be screenshot, it can be used, and you don't know how it's going to be used. And especially in larger group with people you don't trust, but even with close friends, because we've all been teens. We know that your best friend one day might not be your best friend in 3 days, and so even that feeling of trust has to be a big challenge. And so they really have to understand that once it's online, it doesn't belong to you anymore. It has a life on its own. Another thing is when they are being exposed to content that is not appropriate, is to report to an adult. So you have to report and block on the app, but go talk to an adult, because we know there is a toll for children. Like, it really impacts their well-being, their feelings of safety. And having the ability to talk with you or an adult, it doesn't have to be you. Maybe they're more comfortable talking to a trusted adult. It works to what matters, and especially at adolescents, is that they have trusted adults, no matter who it is. It's important to foster an open dialogue and to stay supportive when mistakes happen. When your children learn to walk and they fail, you didn't feel like, oh, you know what, it's too risky, let's not do that anymore. No, you were like, okay, like, we're gonna learn together. I'm gonna be much more careful at the beginning. When there's steps, I'm going to intervene quickly because I know it's harder. It's the same thing when we move to the online digital world. Like, how do we walk them slowly, step by step, and how do we adapt constantly to them in our conversation? It has to be dynamic, because your child now in 3 months and in 6 months is not the same person. So you need to really keep that dialogue going.
And I also want to highlight the followers, especially boys who are blackmailed right now in the US. The people are targeting boys who are on Instagram with a lot of followers, and boys who are in sports team and having their best life, and they are targeted for sextortion. So one of the very easy steps to protect them from scammers and being blackmailed is hiding followers on Instagram. It sounds very easy step to do for a big protection. And now let's go deeper in some recommendation. We really want to acknowledge that all screens are not equal. So we cannot really compare 30 minutes of FaceTime with a family member in France and dumb scrolling makeup tutorial on TikTok. Or we cannot compare 1 hour of homework and 1 hour of playing video games as a first-time shooter. So Mathilde created this pyramid. It's like the food of pyramid, right? So here, the vegetables and the fruits that you can eat as much as you can is reading on tablet, is homework, is a video chat. So we highly recommend video chat instead of group texting chat, and also music. And then you can see the evolution in the pyramid. You can do more educational games and learning. And then you can also have some entertainment. Video games under below 1 hour per day is great. And also we would highly recommend to play with video games with parents. Kids and parents can actually have a very good bonding time together while playing video games. And here, what we would not recommend on the top of the pyramid is having screen before and before school in the morning, during bedtime, mealtime. Mealtime is really, it's a recommendation, right? If it's happened once in a while, that's okay. But it's like the food pyramid, right? You can eat a candy sometimes. You just don't want to eat that all day long. But yeah, we will recommend to avoid violent video games and also social media filters. And I'm not talking about the bunny ears filters, right? And that's funny filters is fine. We are talking about the filters that actually change your appearance, because it's especially bad for teenagers, girl. Okay, so here is a quick introduction of a very big report that French government asked a team of experts. It's very recent. It was published a few weeks ago. And it's a very big stretch on how people use the screens right now. So no shame. It's a big stretch, but here are the steps they recommend to parents. No screen before 3 years old. I feel like it's not new in the French community, and no screen before 3 years old was something famous. But then they say no phones, so phones without internet after 11 years old. What they say is actually try to delay as much as you can phone, and if you really need a phone, then don't give a smartphone, give a flip phone. Then you can delay smartphone later after 13 years old, and they will recommend to access ethical social media after 15 years old. And when you look at what is ethical social media, this is not the social media we're using today. So this is a big stretch about the recommendation. So it's interesting, I think, to see, and I will highly recommend to read this report. It's interesting to see that the French government and are working on regulations. So this is a very specific recommendation, but there's plenty other to give more real world place for kids in our community and to avoid being online too much. Okay, so I highly recommend to read that. So then there's a lot of steps. We tried to range them. Don't be don't be too picky. Maybe some of them don't have a specific place, but here I really want to ask you to see what are the steps you will be interested to take to have a safer access to internet and a better control of your use and your kids' use. If you are doing something that just tell your kids to keep identity and information private, which means name, school, city, address, all of those information. And yeah, digital privacy is an illusion. Everything you put online can be seen. Then reinforce the legal minimum age. There's a lot of social media that require 13 years old to create an account. I think as a parent, it's easier to say, this is the law, let's follow the law. So then it's not you decided the rule. So that's a good step also to take. It doesn't mean you cannot see some TikTok videos with your kids, right? Like you can go on your computer, so then they don't have to create an account. And also because as soon as they create an account with their age and everything, then they are targeted. Girls will receive tutorial for makeup, and boys will receive violent and porn videos. So the more you delay creating accounts, the more you will protect them. If you can take one step after this call, put the parental control. This is an easy one, and it's it's something that will protect them the most. They will not be able to download an app without your consent, for example. And also use child-friendly platforms. So this is more for younger kids. Netflix kids and YouTube kids are safer. That's not perfect, but they are safer. Talk with your children about don't talk to stranger online. This might be obvious offline. We don't interact or we don't create a relationship with someone offline that we don't know. So don't do that also online. And scammers usually don't tell themselves as scammers, right? So even if the kids might think they're talking to another teenagers, this is absolutely possible. The people are not actually teenagers. So educate your child about risk. I think there's a lot of honest discussion about them being a target. Then people will maybe one day invite them to send nude pictures of them. They should know what is cyberbullying and also be invited to make sure their interaction is as safe and as best as possible online. Teach them critical thinking. This is more broad advice. They should be aware that everything online is not true. And especially now, the more and more deep fake is coming, they really should take a step back and feel when they see something that they're not comfortable, but they also should have a critical thinking. Modeling, this is a big thing. And I'm a parent, I know how hard it is to model, but we should model our behavior and our use, because if we have a safe and good use of screen, then it will also inspire our kids. We should be conscious that tech shouldn't stop face-to-face interaction, and communication. We can also try to be aware, like when someone is coming in the room, then I put my phone on the table. We should also model as parent consent. We should ask our kids if they agree us to send a picture to families and friends, and we shouldn't post online a picture that they might not want to be public when they grow up. I know this is a big one. Modeling is a big one, but this is actually a very inspiring and a very important one. So then use tech in a public space at home, especially young kids. It's much safer for them to watch a video in the living room because someone else might be around and we might see if there's an inappropriate content. Then you can talk with your teenager. When are they able to have the phone in their bedroom, for example? And I will highly recommend to not having phones during bedtime and during the night. So we actually recommend to have a routine about them putting their device outside of the bedroom. This will protect them a lot of bad discussions, bad interactions, and also will protect sleep. As you understand now, sleep is a big thing to protect our children's mental health. You can decide about family rules, and actually we will give you some questions or some conversation starter on how to build family rules. Just put everybody from the household around the table and decide, do you want a place where nobody has a phone? Do you want a time during the day when nobody has a phone? Maybe it's mealtime. Maybe actually I would recommend mealtime. What about also screen detox? Should we want to have 1 day per week with no screen and maybe 1 week per year with no screen? And this is why also this is good to talk about that before summer, because maybe summer might be a good opportunity to do a screen detox for 1 week. And we all might enjoy how it's great to feel connected with the people around us and how just having the stack on the side might help us. Oh, I see the time. Okay, I go quick. Yeah, so this is a summer. Usually we lose some rules. So I will invite you to think about what are the rules you want to keep and what are the rules you want to reinforce. It's already an opportunity to reset, and also very important, before the next school year, just sit and set up clear rules. In case you are not comfortable with the rules that you have at home right now, after summer is a good opportunity to come back to and to create new rules that you will prefer. Okay, let's go to the conclusion. We try to give you a bigger idea, and maybe one idea we have to keep is maximize real world experience through physical world, through physical play, because the more the kids will enjoy life in real world, the less you will be worried about digital world. So that's the big part. And yes, we should allow them to take some risk, and we should, as parents, try to not overprotect them in a real world, which is hard, and tech doesn't make it easier. So optimize social interaction also in real life. Again, FaceTime is better than group chat. And demonstrate good behaviors. We talked 1 minute ago about modeling. Delay as much as you can the phone. Smartphone and social media. I think the French new recommendation is a good inspiration. And if you cannot meet those goals, just see what you are comfortable and what you can do. I will highlight to do it as a community, because the more parents in the same school or with the parents of your kid's friend agree on those rules, the easier it is for your kids and for you. And also the more fun it is, because they will have more in-person experience and in-person life. So parental control. Again, if there's one step you can do after this talk is to put the parental control if it's not set yet. And let's talk about a family rules. So here's 2 screenshots about the tools we want to send to you. We will send you a parent-child agreement, so you can also personalize it and see what are the rules you want to set with your kids as they use screens. and also a conversation starter to start a conversation with your child. We are 7:32. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you will take 1 minute to note what is your next step in your family, so you can take concrete step to protect your children and enjoy more real world life. So yeah, the time is over, but we're very happy to stay here. If you have any question, we are very happy to stay longer. Fabien, do you have some question?
It's great because there are things I like. I wanted to go back on several things, because when you show the pyramids, for example, I was thinking as the head of middle school and educator, what does that mean for homework? Should we give homework on laptop? Should we redesign our homework policy? And then at the end, you mentioned this document that you want to share with us. And I know it might sound weird to have this kind of contract with our own kids, but actually, I know for my kids, we have something in the fridge with things that needs to be done. You know, you have the checklist, and yeah, as soon as you're at home, and even for us, because I'm very bad with it, the first one, the phone is plugged away and doesn't move until the morning, and things like that. So it's very, very helpful actually, and it avoids a lot of conflict, because we might forget about the rules, we might be stressed, but just like this, we are consistent. Everybody knows the rules, they are on the fridge, and we're consistent. So it's actually a very useful tool.
It's easier to reinforce a rule that everybody agreed together once.
For the question on what to do about homework and screens, I think there's ages. I think before middle school, there is very little interest in doing it online, because on computers, because they're not even really able yet to browse the internet that well, that safely. And then you could think of incentives. So it's not like you can't do homework online, but maybe when you do things paper, pencil, like there's incentive, maybe there's extra points for that. Maybe you also look at doing like even like in class and in homework, like you do a detox week in your own school, like there's really way of also being playful with that, of doing it as a social experiment. Okay, like there's no screen for a week, you cannot come with it at school, and what happens, and then you can really play with it and see, like, this is a social experiment we are doing. So what did you notice? Did you get more stressed, less stressed? Did you feel more, like, what did you gain? What did you lose? So there's really ways also of like teaching them those things.
I see questions. Colleen, you have a question?
Hello, Colleen.
Hello. Sorry, I'm trying to get my, there it goes. Hi. Similarly, I had a question about recommendations for computer use in school. It's especially, you know, I was just reading today about how understanding and comprehension and retention tend to be better if students take notes by hand with a pencil and paper, which makes total sense. And I know that there have been a lot of issues of students getting very distracted in class with their computers. So yeah, just generally, if you had any ideas or recommendations about the use of computers in class in school.
So I might not make friends, but except if there is a point of having the computer, then maybe there's no point in having the computer. So if you're doing a presentation, yes, you want a computer. If you're doing something that doesn't really need it, well, then maybe it's about a balance. Maybe not everything should be done on the computer. It's not because you have it that everything should be done on there. So same, I think it's really about finding the right balance. And even in the curriculum, thinking what are the things where it is actually a great tool. And I think that's the way to sell it to children. It is a tool. So you don't use a hammer when you're cooking food, because you don't need a hammer to do that. That's not the best tool. But if you're doing some work in your house, that's when you want your hammer. So it's the same, like the computer, the AI, the digital world is a great tool for you. So when is it serving you? And when is it actually getting in the way of you doing a good job?
Does it answer your question? But then we will let the school decide their policies, right? But we are happy to thank you for your question. I think it's
Sorry if I messed up.
no, but I think it's a nice opportunity to think about the balance of
Yeah, and yeah, if I may, yeah, no, and I completely agree with you. You know, the tool should be here to enhance the learning. It should not be using the tool for using the tool. But we have also to remember that you know, we have 15% in English and 50% in French. So our day we have to pack most of what a monolingual school would do in 50% of the time, in both languages. So I think for some teachers, the tool is also an accelerator, something that can drive the learning faster. And that's the reason why also, you know, in some homeworks, we see the usage of you know, the screens. But I think this is also a conversation that we have with our own teachers around, you know, the different tools. And we are fortunate that, you know, at EB this year, we have a new position, which is the academic technology specialist, who is really here to, you know, do two major things. It's train the teachers on using the technology as an enhancer, really pushing the learning in terms of you know, enhancing the learning and providing great you know, outcomes. And then the second thing is really teaching the digital life skills. She did lately you know, a lesson on AI and what it means, the algorithm, how you get sucked into some videos on YouTube with great examples. And I think, you know, it's also takes a lot of education in terms of learning how those machines work and how you have, you know, you can be just, you know, the user of a product, and, you know, this critical thinking is also something. So I just wanted also to say, and then I will let the floor to the other people. Thank you very much. What you said is really in line with our philosophy at EB. You know, we think that everything is a balance. You know, I was hearing today Lisa Damour, who is a famous national psychologist, who was really talking about the well-being in you know, teenagers, and really looking also at what schools should bring to teenagers, and that, you know, in life there are many struggles, there are many challenges, but we are at school, we are here to equip them with the tools to overcome those challenges. And every day we'll have challenges. It's not fair to say that, you know, school should be fun, school should be very easy. No, school should be difficult. You are going to encounter a lot of you know, difficulties along the way, a lot of road bumps. But as educator, we are here to equip them with you know, the right tools and things to really make them you know, just go over those ramp ups. So thank you very much. It was you know, very I think useful for our community.
Thank you for the feedback. Stephanie, we want to hear your question.
Oh, thank you so much. Again, thank you. This was an excellent presentation. Two things. Is there a chance this could be presented to students, particularly our 8th graders? You know, this is digestible, I believe, for their age range. I saw Screenagers many years ago, and I feel like this is Screenagers 5.0, you know, it's been refreshed. So that's my first question. And then, you know, to the administration's point, it's important to teach moderation. And I know that was in the pyramid, but I think the students need to understand, and we're trying to teach this at home as well. It's not going away. So how do you just come and go from it without being addicted? And, you know, it's the terminology, etc. But would love to have our students go through this. Thank you.
Absolutely. Actually, we already had a discussion with Mr. Lombard about a presentation for kids, and it seems like you mentioned in the introduction that you are thinking of that, but for next year, next school year.
Okay.
Mr. Lombard, I'll let you give maybe more details.
No, I know that you created a workshop and with students, so I would love to have the workshop at school during the school day, because if we do that just like a pen night, most of the students won't be able to attend. So during the school day, having this kind of workshop with them, and if I remember correctly, and Sophie, you also have a workshop, students and parents together. Students would love that for sure. But at some point it will be cool also, because it's a great way to have the dialogue, the open communication.
Yeah, I think it helps spark conversation, this workshop, and it gives a pretty similar information, but in a way that is probably even more engaging, where there's more participation, where they're more active, and that we developed actually with teenagers. So we've beta tested with them. They've been part of making it and of the process. And I think it's really important when you want to have content that appeal to a generation, to build it with that, with your targets.
Thank you. It's a beautiful presentation.
Thank you so much for your feedback. David, we would love your question.
Thanks. That was a fantastic presentation. This is just more of a very brief comment or suggestion. My wife and I periodically have power outage nights where we essentially pretend that the power is out, and that involves no screens, but also no lights, and that transforms what would otherwise be kind of a chore of like not using screens into more of a fun activity, and like
that's cool.
Bring out flashlights and candles and lanterns and play board games, and yeah, it really it makes not having screens a much more enticing activity. And also, when the power does go out, you know where all your flashlights are. So that's useful.
Thank you for sharing. That's such a cool idea. I really like playing with some constraints to have more fun and to experience something different. Thank you so much for sharing. I definitely want to add that to the presentation somewhere.
David, I think you can call it a date night as well, no? Power outage night is
Sure, yeah. Date night is a nicer way to frame it, I guess. We also end up going to bed earlier when there are no lights. Like you're not going to stay up for 8 hours in the dark.
Yeah, that's true. And you just don't. I mean, you get your surge of melatonin earlier, so you get sleepy earlier. It's just also like biologically, like you want to go to bed.
Yeah, having more sleep is a big topic for our children, so that's a good reminder at the end. Good job. Okay, I don't know if we have a last question or if we should wrap up.
Don't see it.
Yeah. So thank you so much for your time and for your attention. We really hope every family will have one or two ideas to make it concrete to your daily life and to your family life. And again, no judgment. We are mother ourselves, and we know how hard it is. So even if we know some techniques and some ideas, we also try to figure out our own family rules. So yeah, we are in this together, and work with your friends. And also, we mentioned that 5th grader parents might be interested with this talk. I will highly encourage 5th graders parents to talk to each other, because a lot of parents give a phone between 5th and 6th grade. Just let's work as a community. If you're not feeling comfortable to give a phone to your kids, just let's lead the other parents, so then it will be easier on you and on your kids. So.
And also, don't trust them. They're gonna tell you.
They're gonna tell you they are the only one with the phone. Yes, don't trust that argument. Absolutely. Thank you so much. And we will
Thanks.
send you the PDF so you can, Mr. Lombard, so you can share with the community.
Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. It was a great, great start, and I hope the conversation is gonna be even more fruitful next year, and it's gonna be yeah, a great adventure altogether. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so
Have
much.
a good evening. Bye.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
well.